Hello to all the children from the Southern Mallee and Lakes Clusters schools. My name's Annie Stewart. I wonder if you remember when I visited last year. Well, I must say I saw some of your storytelling efforts and you were fantastic. You really learned heaps, but the thing I loved about it, you seemed to really enjoy telling the stories. So this year, your teachers and I have decided to try something a bit different. We won't only look at myths and legends, but we're really interested for you to tell the stories of your place. We know that the children from Japarut and Rainbow are interested in telling Indigenous stories. You know how it is with me. I think it's proper when you tell stories to always acknowledge the traditional owners of the place. So we'll be hearing a little bit about Indigenous Australia, in particular the tribes that lived around your region. I'm also sending a copy of a story to the teachers at your school, and it's all about Johnny Mallee. Johnny Mallee was a famous Aboriginal cricketer that went to England, the first team ever to leave Australia to go and play overseas. He was a Watchabaluk man, and I believe that's the people that live around your region. Beulah, I believe a local historian has visited your school and you've started talking about the history of place. One of the things that I saw was the Beulah Visual Heritage Project from 2001. And there were so many different interesting little stories in there. Perhaps you might follow up on the history of agriculture in the region. You know it is the year of farming, and I also thought that time I visited the mural at your school. What are the stories behind that? There's a lot of different early settlers you could talk about, and the bollards from the Commonwealth Games. I also noticed that in 2001, when they were celebrating 100 years since Federation, the local craft and embroidery group made a quilt. Perhaps you could tell us some of the stories behind that. At Hopeton we have the Pre-12 school and St. Joseph's, and this lends itself to a lot of interesting stories. I'd like to know some of the names, place names, the Aboriginal place names, and where does Hopeton come from? I hear a very important man in your district was named Edward LaSalle. Perhaps you could tell his story. Also, it seems to be a dry place up there, and there are miles or kilometres and kilometres of open channels. Water must be very important in your region. Is there any stories you'd like to tell about that? St. Joseph's Primary, I know that you guys are part of the Josephite order, and you know my auntie was in the Josephites, but one of the most interesting things to me is this was the order of Mary MacKillop, Saint Mary MacKillop. I wonder if you could tell us a story about this famous person. She is, of course, the first saint of Australia, but she was passionate and really interested in education for all. Gee, that'd be an interesting story for you to tell. And I noticed after I come and visit you in May, the sisters from the Mary MacKillop Foundation are coming to visit you. Wouldn't it be great if you had a story to tell them? And you, Pete, you're only a tiny little school, but you seem to be the gateway to the Lakes District. What is it you could tell us about the lakes and the parks? And what would people need to know if they were coming to visit you for a camping weekend? There's so many different interesting stories. I'm really looking forward to hearing them. Now, I've put a few clips up on YouTube of some of the stories I did with some of the children from Melbourne schools. It was called Meandering Through Melbourne. And in it I tell you the story of Barak, an Aboriginal man that was a storyteller and a painter. And he left a record for us all to know a bit more about the Wurundjeri people. There's a little story about Biddy O'Neill, an Irish orphan girl that arrived in Australia, and Nino Bizzari, the King of Carlton, and his story as he arrived here in Australia, an Italian cycling champion. These stories are there just to give you a little idea and a taste what it might be like to tell local history. Well, it's time for the holidays, so while you're on holidays and enjoying yourself, start to think about how you would tell people about your region. Ask relatives, ask older people in the community what do they remember, and what is it that you children think the rest of Australia should know about your very special place. Well, it's bye for now, and I'll look forward to seeing you in May.